Welcome back to Melodic Memories of Light's Monarch. I'm Casey, here to touch on some of my favorite artists and bands, starting with 21 Pilots. I know I mentioned them a little bit before, but they are one of the main bands that have gotten me through many hard times in my life, and honestly, I'm so grateful for finding them. It was actually back in high school, I guess junior high maybe, start of high school, like grade 10 grade 9, grade 10, somewhere around there. I was in Cosmo class, which is, for those that don't know, cosmetology, hairdressing, such stuff like that. We were doing the hairdressing modules at the time. So I think that's as far as I got. Wasn't super into it, not gonna lie. I love doing hair when I'm good at it, but yeah, it wasn't my forte. Anyways, during that Cosmo class, my friend at the time, Matthew, shout out to him, haven't talked to him in years. But if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have found 21 Pilots when I did. Because the year was probably 2015 when I found them. Granted, I know they started a long while before that, and their first self-titled album was like 2009. So I was a little bit late to the party, of course, but when I was shown them, my buddy walks into class and is just like, hey man, I found a band that I think you'll really like. They're incredibly emo and there's not really, his words, they're incredibly emo and there's not really a genre to define them in. And I thought they'd be right up your alley. So he handed me his Beats headphones and sitting there in class played the very first song I ever heard of theirs, being the newly released at the time, Stressed Out. So that song is before it really exploded everywhere and 21 Pilots got big because of the Blurryface album. But when that single dropped, I guess that's when my buddy Matthew found them and showed them to me. And as soon as I heard it, I was like, whoa, this is something entirely new, like entirely different. And it was one of those moments that I've had countless times before, like with Black Veil Brides or Panic at the Disco. With 21 Pilots, hearing them for the first time, it was like mind blowing. It was so different from what I was used to. And to be shown it from one of my best friends at the time was really just a sweet kind of cherry on top, if you will. And with listening to Stressed Out for the first time, it was something that I just couldn't put my finger on. I was like, that was amazing. But it went directly into the next song that he had saved by them. And he's like, oh, this is one of their songs too. You'll probably like it. And it was Car Radio. Now, I know that these two songs are the biggest singles from both Vessel and Blurryface respectively, being, Car Radio and Stressed Out, but it was a great entry point. And I remember looking up their tour dates afterwards, and unfortunately their tour dates that they were going on were sold out like everywhere. And I was like, okay, so they're popular, but they didn't explode to the point where everything was on the radio and everything like that. Because I remember there was a time where you couldn't turn on the pop radio station without hearing Stressed Out or Ride. I remember that one being everywhere. I worked at KFC at the time in my hometown, and very small place, but the radio station we were listening to would play Ride on repeat, I swear. And I didn't complain. I was very happy about it because I was a big 21 Pilots fan, and at that point had been for a year or so. But it was the reason why I actually learned all the words to Ride. I know it's not like a huge, lyrically impressive song, but like that rap bit at the very beginning, I don't know. I I made it a goal of myself to really be able to learn that and perform it myself. And it was just a nice little pat on the back moment of like, fuck yeah, I did that. But aside from that, with 21 Pilots, it's such a moment that I remember almost clear as day, listening to them for the first time and just going down the rabbit hole of finding all these songs. Some deep cuts, of course, ones that aren't actually like released from Regional at Best, which shout out to that album. My God, the fact that that album got cucked the way it did and turned into Vessel. Vessel's amazing, but some of those songs that they cut, blasphemy, honestly. Like Kitchen Sink, Hello, Ruby, Hello, like there's so many. I could go on. Slow Town, like there's far more than just that, of course. Regional at Best is one that I went out of my way to go and burn onto a CD and listen to in my car. I was actually doing that on the lead up to their newest album, Clancy, because Regional at Best, though I knew the songs from back in high school when I'd find them on YouTube, I hadn't listened to them since then because I was just always listening to Spotify or my CDs or my vinyl records, which 21 Pilots, finally I own all of their albums, excluding their self-titled, because I know that hasn't ever been pressed officially. There's bootlegs all over the place of it, but I'm not about that. I'd only buy it if it was officially released or if I just randomly came across it, which I have not. But maybe one day. Who knows? But as I was saying, I was listening to Regional at Best on my burnt CD copy that I ended up joining a Discord to download. Don't know how much I can touch on that because legality reasons, but was able to find the WAV files and the MP3 files and burn them to a CD, and the rest is history. I now have it, and what an album that is. But since I wasn't there for it originally when it was releasing, the first actual release that I was there for, in terms of being a fan and actually active in the fan base and following them on socials and everything of the sorts, was when Trench started. I remember the build-up when the eyeball on their profile photo, it closed and then it reopened, and Trench was announced. Starting off with the lead single, Jumpsuit. Oh my god. That song in itself is still one of my favorites to this day. I remember being there for the YouTube video, the premiere, I think it was, for the music video. And they also dropped Nico and the Niners at the same time. And both of those songs were amazing. Nico and the Niners was a little bit less heavy, but had that little bit of a rap verse in it. And that was something that really made me cheese. I was like, oh my god. But I remember when Jumpsuit came out, to go back to the one that they really put all the effort into, because Nico and the Niners didn't get a music video until a little bit after. But with Jumpsuit coming out, I remember being there, and at the time I was following a YouTuber by the name Crank That Frank. Haven't heard of him, or from him rather, in so many years. I think the last time I knew of him, he was trying to make his own band and had one song out at the time, and I don't know if anything came of that. If anyone knows, let me know. Shout me out on socials and hit me up, let me know if he's still around. But I remember being there for his video of the Trench announcement, and when the actual album came out, he dressed himself up as a vulture. He did the same thing for Fall Out Boy's Mania and painted himself all purple, which, I don't know, is a different time. I remember him very fondly. Repressed emo for life. Don't know if he had any controversy regarding him though, so apologies for my ignorance if he does. But at the time, it was definitely a formative experience. And with Jumpsuit, I remember being there watching the music video and playing it on repeat and rocking the fuck out. So much so to the point where I almost fell really bad because I was just headbanging and jumping off my bed and doing fucking shit that 21 Pilots does, because I know they do flips and all that stuff. I'm not that skilled, my god no. But at the time I was just headbanging hard and just thrashing around, and when he does that little scream after the breakdown, if you will, if you want to call it a breakdown, after that segment in the song, is just such a memorable moment. Such a memorable moment, and one that I will forever cherish, because 21 Pilots, wow, did they ever cook with the album Trench and everything they released for it. I know I'm a little bit biased because it is my first time being there for an actual album release, which that album release was also the time that I got to see them for the very first time, and only time so far, unfortunately, for the Bandito tour. And it was in Edmonton. Don't know the exact date, but it must have been in 2018. And I remember being there, going down to Edmonton, because I didn't live there, still don't. But I remember going on the trip. It was originally supposed to be me and my girlfriend at the time, but I think maybe a month or two before, her and I ended up splitting, and the rest is kind of history. I had an extra ticket, So I ended up taking my dad. And as I've mentioned in other previous episodes, my dad was more of the kind of old school, like classic rock, maybe some like alternative stuff thrown in here, but all from like the either 70s, 80s to like early 2000s. That was kind of more of his vibe, and he didn't even know who 21 Pilots was. And he's also someone that suffers from epilepsy, so taking him to the 21 Pilots concert was something I didn't really think through because wow, does 21 Pilots ever have a lot going on. Like their light show, insane. Still to this day, probably the most impressive light show I've ever seen. Like with all of it. It's just the production is out of this world. And I love the fact that the band has actually like talked about it and said when they're making songs and releasing albums, they try to find songs that they feel their live set is missing and create those songs because they're all about the live music. And granted, I don't know if that's still the case, but I remember reading that in an interview from a while back. But when I was able to take my dad to the show, he ended up kind of enjoying it. Like he didn't know who they were, and as I said, the epilepsy that he has, luckily, is not triggered by flashing lights, thank God. But loud noise, not the best. And there were some girls near us that were just like squealing. You know, the classic female kind of scream that you hear in every live concert video. They were like right next to us. So that was good. But I was also counteracting it by just screaming the lyrics to every song because, oh my God, I was there, I had to do it. Unfortunately, was not in the pit, but had a seat, so I actually got to see the full show. And one of the most memorable moments in it for me was when they were singing a song. I can't remember exactly which song, which is unfortunate, but maybe I can find the video and post it to my socials, because I know that they exist somewhere on my phone. But the show started with the Banditos on the stage with like torches and everything. And I believe they started with Jumpsuit. But as the show was going on, there was a segment in it where the stage actually lifted up into the air, which, you know, was not expecting. Granted, you have to remember this was maybe like my second or third show I've ever been to. And to see it, like the stage rose up and Tyler was up on there just rapping his stuff, and the lights went like, okay, so how do I explain this in words? The stage went up and he was rapping, and then as soon as he was done rapping, he started falling backwards off of the lifted platform, and the lights went out, completely pitch black, and everyone was just like, what? And kind of like screaming. And then out of nowhere, the spotlight up into the top corner of the stadium, and there he was. Somehow he was up there just finishing the rap, and is like, holy shit, what? My brain at the time could not comprehend. I know that he was probably up there to begin with, and there was probably a body double, but the magic of just seeing that and making that work so well, absolutely insane. And then when they went to play Car Radio and he ran through the crowd and climbed up the big old tower and ripped off the mask, like the iconic moment, I was there for that. And it's just little moments like that, being a fan of 21 Pilots, that's just so lovely to look back on, because not everyone gets to see them. And again, I haven't seen them since the Bandito tour. And it's unfortunate because obviously Scaled and Icy came out. Divisive album, of course, but I personally really liked it, and it's actually my roommate's favorite album of theirs. But unfortunately, due to COVID, as well as not just myself, but many other people out there, many fans, weren't able to see their Scaled and Icy tour. And then going into Clancy rather, didn't get to see that either, because they didn't announce any dates in Canada except for Toronto, I think. There might have been a Montreal date. I can't really speak on that for sure, but I know for sure there was Toronto. Nowhere else, though, in Canada. And Canada, just saying this right now, is bigger than Toronto, okay? Just for all those artists out there, all those people out there that don't think Canada's much more than Toronto or maybe even Vancouver, there's more to it. There's a lot more to it. And it's unfortunate to see that it's not like a viable option for many artists to actually travel through Canada because it's so expensive, because everything is so spread out. A lot of landmass, a lot of space to cover, and there's not a lot in Canada in terms of like giant cities with billions of people like that. That's not what we have up here. Anyways, I'm getting off track. With 21 Pilots, the Trench show in particular, the Bandito tour, the other memorable moment that I remember very fondly is Tyler actually going to sing Legend. And he speaks on his grandfather, who the song's about. And at the time, I didn't really know that. I don't know how I didn't, because listening to the song, obviously you can tell what it's about, but it just kind of clicked in that moment. And it made me tear up. I remember him standing up there and the big jumbotron behind him had literally just the video of him, and it was so heartfelt. It just made me cry. And then it transitioned, I believe, into the piano segment where they did Neon Gravestones, and it looked like sparkles were falling out of the sky because of the lights that they had. Amazing. And Neon Gravestones is one of my favorite songs from Trench, just saying. The message it holds of just how society is, where no one really gives a shit about an artist or about someone until they're dead, especially if they die young. It's so sad to see, because you see it with Juice WRLD, like he's one of the ones that come to mind almost instantly, to where like, yeah, he was respected, he was very big, but when he passed away, it exploded exponentially. And it's unfortunate to see these artists passing away so young, and be it on their own terms or completely, an accident, because life is very unpredictable. It's just very sad to see that we will cherish these artists, these people that go out with a bang far before their time, rather than the people that worked very hard throughout their whole life. Like, it's a weird juxtaposition, and it's just odd to see in our society that kind of thing is rewarded and praised when it really shouldn't be. It's kind of awful. But enough rambling on that. I also wanted to talk about 21 Pilots and their new song coming out very soon. Not sure how soon, probably in November, but the artist listing for the Arcane series made by the League of Legends team on Netflix, Arcane Season 2, 21 Pilots is one of the many artists that are supposed to be on the soundtrack for Season 2. And with Season 1, every song that was on the soundtrack, to my knowledge, was made for Arcane. Like, brand new songs specifically for the show. And to see 21 Pilots on the soundtrack makes me wonder, are we getting a brand new song? I don't want to overhype it, and I don't want to get too excited, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't excited at all, because it's incredibly exciting to know that Clancy just came out earlier this year. Amazing album, by the way. If you haven't listened to it, go listen to it. What are you doing even listening to this podcast? But no, all things considered, Clancy, amazing album. I think they did great with it. I know some people weren't exactly happy with the way that it ended the whole storyline, but I digress. I personally loved it. And with the way that they left it, kind of to be a cycle of sorts, was just, I don't know, it was fitting. I know that not every fan was happy, but that's probably a topic to get into on another day and try to get some of your reaction. Like, if you liked Clancy or dislike Clancy, let me know at my socials, at Lights Monarch. But to touch on the new song coming out, it makes me curious to know, are we getting anything else to do with the story? Because for those of you that don't really know 21 Pilots, they've had a storyline that's been going on for many, many, many years at this point. That kind of started with, I want to say Vessel, but really blew up in Blurryface, because Blurryface introduced the character, and it was built upon exponentially with Trench. And that is something I'll say quickly, was the only problem I had with Clancy, is that it wasn't as lore heavy, like it should have been. But Clancy was lore heavy and is lore heavy, but not in the traditional sense that they did with Trench, because Trench was very straightforward. It said the names of the characters and was very in your face, like, hey, there's something more to this. Like, there is a storyline that they're following, there's these characters, and there's certain words like Dima and the phrase East is up. Like, if you're not a bandito, if you're not a part of the clique, a 21 Pilots fan, you're not going to understand a lot of these terms. And in Clancy, they kind of drop all of those terms until I think like the last song on the album, after the long break of silence, to where they finally reference Banditos and Nico and Blurryface actually talking and saying the few, the proud, the emotional, to touch on that. And it's just interesting the way they did it to make it more, I guess, accessible for everyone that doesn't know the storyline, but it is also the big finale, so I think that'd be the only thing I'd have to say about Clancy that would be negative, because the album itself might just be my album of the year. Don't take me on that for sure yet, because there's still a bit of the year left, but come the end of the year, I'm going to be making my top 5 to top 10 list of albums that came out this year, and that's definitely going to be towards the top. Just saying that now. But with the Arcane song, are they going to continue that storyline, or is this their first step of finally detaching from that and just making the music they want to make? Is it going to be something giant? Is it going to be just, like, I don't even know. I think for 21 Pilots, regardless of what they make, it's going to be something monumental. And for it to be on the Arcane soundtrack, it's got to kind of have themes of Arcane, but it just pulls me back to when they released Heathens, because Heathens came out, I think, a year after Blurryface, and was for the Suicide Squad soundtrack. Now, that movie got very fucked up with studio interference, which, you know, the classic saying, it happens all the fucking time. It's ridiculous how much it happens, but with Suicide Squad, that was one of the movies that just was fucked by Warner Bros. But the soundtrack was really good. So we got the Bohemian Rhapsody cover, which that one in itself is very divisive. I personally like it, but I understand those that don't. And that was by none other than Panic at the Disco. And then we got, obviously, Heathens, which comes later in the track list. And that song didn't seem to be a part of any storyline, but you watch the music video, and it gives you hints. It throws little hints and jabs at, wait, why is it yellow? You know what I mean? Like, how because in the music video, his jumpsuit is orange, but in certain lighting it looks yellow. And then you see them on stage and he has a yellow suit and the tape on his fingers. And you really get to notice, like, oh, this is like a sneak peek at what's to come with Trench. And also, not only just in the aesthetic of it all, but also the sound of it, because it was very bass driven and wasn't as hectic and loud as some of the Blurryface songs were, because those ones were drum heavy and very fast paced. I will still say to this day and probably forever, Blurryface, it's not my favorite album of theirs, but it is lightning captured in a bottle. It's one of those once in a lifetime albums that if they wouldn't have made it when they did, it wouldn't exist. And I don't think it'll ever be recreated the way it was captured when it was first made. So that's what makes me most excited for this Arcane track, to know, are we getting something like Heathens? To the extent where, is it gonna kind of tie into the lore like Heathens does, where you can even hear some of Nico or Blurryface, that kind of deeper toned voice that people associate him with? Are we gonna get something like that with the Arcane song? Or is it gonna just be its own thing? I'm leaning more towards it being its own thing, just from the outside looking in, but only time will tell. And in saying all of that, I definitely love 21 Pilots. They've helped me through a lot of dark moments in my life, alongside many other bands, but to touch on them real quick for the last time here, they were just a band that really understood mental illness. You can hear it in their lyrics, especially with Vessel, and going on throughout their whole discography. You can tell Tyler Joseph himself struggled with a lot of demons. And that's what the beauty of the story is that it's all in his head. All these characters are different mental illnesses, if you will, to where he understands. He's struggled with it too, and it's so nice to be able to hear it and find unity in that pain, to then be like, we're stronger than this, we can keep on going. And that's one of the reasons why with Clancy there's a song called Oldies Station, and that one hit me really hard to where there's moments where I listen to it and just cry because Push On Through is one of the main lyrics of the song. And it's no longer keep fighting, stay alive. It's just keep pushing. You've been in this fight for so long. Push on through. You know you can. And it kind of sends that message. And it just. And it makes me a little bit emotional to even kind of think about because I've been there through not their whole career, mind you, but through some big moments. And they were there for some big moments in my life too. And for it to finally come full circle the way it did, I really can't be disappointed. And I'm just excited to see where they go from here. And I really, really hope that they bring their Clancy tour to Canada in more ways than just Toronto. Please bring it to Edmonton, anywhere close by even. I will take it. I would love to see this tour because it looks like it's just a love letter to the fans that have been around forever. Like, it spans their whole discography, and from what I've seen on Twitter, little snippets here and there, I've tried to stay spoiler free because obviously just in the hopes that they might bring it somewhere close, or in the hopes that maybe they'll do a live concert video or something of the sorts. Like, whatever it is, I'm here for it. The tour looks amazing. They're performing some oldies, some classics, and I would love to be there for it. The last thing, though, I wanted to touch on the fan base. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but the Banditos, or more so known as the Skeleton Clique, that's the fan base of 21 Pilots. I would say I'm a part of it myself, but I've never really attributed to the creativity that they hold. And wow, is the Skeleton Clique ever creative. The things that they make, I swear to God, like the artwork, be it the fan-made music videos, especially with Clancy. Even my buddy ended up making a video for Overcompensate, which was very well done. And it's so cool to see the creativity that this band really pulls out of people. The way that it's able to be just an outlet for these people and drawing and whatever you want to make for them, like they also notice it. Like they see these creations that you post online and actually interact or repost it, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful community, and it's beautiful to be a part of it. Granted, just like any other community, there is the toxicity to be had, and 21 Pilots, their fan base is full of the toxicity as well. But if you don't listen to the noise and steer clear of that, you find something very beautiful in all the creations that the fans make, and the way that 21 Pilots treats their fan base in just kind of like, there's a tweet from Tyler Joseph even saying like numbers aren't everything, and he was so proud of the fact that Clancy did as well as it did because he had no idea. He didn't think it would do nearly as good as it did because of how much people hated on Scaled and Icy. And it's sad to say that Scaled and Icy got so much hate when it really shouldn't have, and at least nowadays it is getting a little bit more retribution since Clancy has come out. But with Tyler saying, like, you guys outdid any of my expectations, and don't beat yourself up for the album not being number one, you're the greatest fan base anyone could have. And, like, I know that they could all be generic statements, but it really feels very sincere to hear from him. And that's not even the only case of it either. It's a lovely fan base, it's a lovely band, and if anyone wants to get into 21 Pilots, I would highly recommend it, especially if you're struggling with some mental health issues, as I have, and I know many others have. Give 21 Pilots a listen. They might just help you find that light within the darkness. A quick break here just to say, if you guys want some makeup, I know I've said it every episode, but Curse Cosmetics, they have some makeup to be sold. Go to their website, use the code LIGHTSMonarch. No spaces, no caps, no punctuation, just LIGHTSMonarch at checkout for 10% off. And share what you get. I would love to see the things you guys pick up because they have a lot to choose from, a lot of different artist palettes, and in my opinion, they're all really fucking cool, and I would love for you guys to share exactly your favorite things from that website. So go check them out. Try to find something that you like. If you order it, let me know. I would love to see it. Anyways, the last bit of this podcast, I wanted to touch on another artist that I personally love and that has also helped me through a lot of shit in my life, and that is my favorite rapper of all time, NF. As I said, he's my favorite rapper of all time, and I think I ended up finding him back, I want to say the year before Perception dropped, so probably 2016, around the same time I found 21 Pilots, not gonna lie, when I believe he was on the Therapy Session tour. I don't know if it had any special name, but that was also sold out at the time, so I didn't get to go see that. But my first song that I heard from him was Therapy Session itself. And my God, does that song ever still hit to this day. It was the very first rap song I ever learned from start to finish. Though, wait, that might be a lie. I think my very first one I ever learned from start to finish was Love the Way You Lie by Eminem and Rihanna. But this was a different kind of vibe from anything Eminem would do. Like, not saying anything, I shouldn't say that, because there are some very heartfelt songs Eminem has released over the years. But they are also, you look at them, they are different artists. And with NF, I found him, got to listen to his stuff. I can't remember if anyone really showed me him. I think it might have been my other friend Matthew, because I had two friends named Matthew in high school, and I believe the other showed me him at least once. But I remember hearing about him through one of my friends in school at the time, and he used to perform at these youth concerts out in Edmonton, and I don't know if they still go on. I don't think so. But at the time when NF was coming up, he is a Christian, and a lot of people at the time would call him a Christian rapper, and he's come to say that he's not a Christian rapper, but he is a rapper that is a Christian, which is, respect to him. But I remember finding him all the same and wanting to go see one of his shows, and even to the extent of, I remember the exact moment of when Perception came out. It was before I had any idea of following when albums would drop or when a certain artist would drop a new single or a new song. I just remember laying in the hotel in Edmonton when I was on a trip with my mom and I think my little sister. And I was just looking through my phone. It was probably midnight at the time, and went to Spotify, and it notified me that NF dropped a new album. And I was like, what the fuck? Excuse me? New NF music? And I was so taken aback because I had no idea. And with Perception dropping, I remember throwing in my headphones instantly, mom and sister asleep in the other bed, and I was just vibing, hard vibing, and just being so hyped, like, oh my God. And obviously quietly, as quiet as I could. I hope I didn't wake them. I don't think I did, but I remember it very fondly. And that was the very first album that I was there for. Not release, leading up to the release, but when it dropped, I do remember listening to it the second I seen it, and I messaged my buddy Matthew to be like, yo, new NF music, holy shit, did you know this? And he was just as out of the loop as I was, and it was just such a moment in time that I remember very fondly. And I think my favorite song on it, I don't even know if I'd be able to pick one, but Remember This. The biggest one, I should say, was Let You Down. That one I even heard on the radio alongside Ride when I worked at KFC. And that one caught me off guard even more than Ride did. Because to hear NF on the radio, I would have never expected. And so many people, when I asked them, hey, do you know who this is, when it would play, they had no idea. They had no clue who NF was. And it's sad to say that's the only song that I remember hearing on the radio that's been his. It's so sad to not, for him to not get the recognition. I know he doesn't care, and he's happy with the fan base that he has. But I always strive for my favorite artists to be seen in the spotlight because I know that they deserve it. And he's someone that's definitely deserving. And at this point, with the release of Hope, which came out last year, it's just, it's time for him to get recognition. He might be considered, or at least I would consider him, one of the legends. Because he's been around for, again, probably at least 10 years, and he's getting up there in terms of his career. And he's actually quite respected amongst the rap community, for what I know, and has inspired a few artists themselves. Look at Echo. He's a newer rapper that does stuff on TikTok, and he's been around for a long while too, but with his music that really kind of took off on TikTok and everything, it was very NF adjacent, if you will, very like, emotional and everything. And with NF himself, it's something that I love about him is that he's just so authentic. Like his slogan is real. And all of his raps are exactly that. They are real. And you can relate to them at one point or another in your life. And there's been NF songs that I listen to that I'm like, fuck, this is good, but it never hits until I went through something in my life. And then I listen to it again out of nowhere, and it just hits me like a truck because that's the real shit that he's talking about. So I very much adore NF and all that he does, and I'm excited to see what's next. He did just randomly tweet "the end" the other day to get people talking, I think, and deleted it almost instantaneously because that's what he loves to do. But it's something that I'm excited for. I'm hoping for new NF music here in the future. Obviously, I'm happy and content with hope, but I would love more all the time, obviously, as everyone would, especially being one of my favorite artists and favorite rapper of all time. I'm surprised listening to my old episodes that I never mentioned him before because he is one of my mainstays. And in saying that, I have been lucky enough to see him twice in my life. So far, mind you, as I got to see him on the Search tour with my buddy Logan and the Hope tour with a much larger group. I got to bring out but my friend Tyler along with Alex, Logan, and Paul, all my buddies. We got to go out. I think the only one that was missing was Ryan, but got to go out all the same and see the Hope tour, and both of the shows were amazing, but to see the Hope tour and NF finally being in a stadium was absolutely insane. I personally loved it. The show was just expanded on every level, and the production was just through the roof, comparing the two shows in my mind. And I'm glad that I was able to see it. I can't wait till he comes back. You got fans here, NF, and I'm definitely one of those. And there's a lot of fond memories I have of those shows, which I think I'll touch on again a little more in depth another time. But if I can find some of those videos too, they'll be posted on my socials. Go check them out if you care to. And on that note, I've been rambling a little bit here and there. Spent a lot of time on 21 Pilots. I will touch on NF again in the next one a little bit more if I've got the time, because he is an artist that deserves so much respect and one of my favorite artists that I could probably talk about and ramble about for a very long time. But to save you all from that, I'm going to end it here with talking about some of the new releases that came out just this past week, being Eminem's deluxe edition of The Death of Slim Shady, or I guess I should say the Mourners edition. Just had a couple extra songs on it. If you haven't heard his new album, go listen to it. Just keep in mind, you gotta listen to it in order. It is a concept album, and if you don't listen to it in order, you might be a little lost, not gonna lie. But it is definitely a worthwhile album. And aside from that, The Funeral Portrait released their new album. I hadn't really heard of them before this one came out, not gonna lie either, but Greetings from Suffocate City, that one I enjoyed quite a bit. It reminded me very much of Motionless in White, I want to say, to an extent. Like, there were some songs that didn't sound like Motionless at all, but I could say, just from listening to them, that Motionless would have been a big influence on them, because you can hear it. But the big song that I remember hearing from them for the first time was the song that they did, Suffocate City, the title track, if you will, with Spencer Charnas of Ice Nine Kills. Again, really good album. Go give it a listen if you like metalcore, rock and roll. Just go check it out. You probably won't be disappointed. And if you are, feel free to yell at me. And the last thing that was released on Friday there was the Motionless in White 10-year anniversary of Reincarnate. Just, I think it was only 3 songs that they ended up doing, but they re-recorded them completely. Re-recorded, reproduced, and honestly, I really enjoyed it. I have a friend, though, that loves Motionless and was actually kind of disappointed, which is unfortunate to say, but personally, I liked it just because I could understand him better. Like Chris and his screams and just singing in general He's found his voice more so now, so you can actually understand it a little bit better, and it sounds just stronger in a sense. So, those are 3 new releases. I personally enjoyed them all. Go listen to them. Let me know if you enjoy them just as much. And also let me know what you think of 21 Pilots, what you think of NF, what you thought might come next for both of them. And in my opinion, I'm actually holding hope for Clouds 2 by NF, or something adjacent to that, like another mixtape, because I would love to see the artists that NF is able to get to collab with him like he did in Clouds, with being Hobson and Tech Nine being the 2 big ones, and I think the only ones, but besides the point. I would just love to hold out hope, which I doubt it's going to happen because NF is a clean rapper. I would just love to hold out hope for an Eminem collab because that's something that I'm sure would just make me ascend. Anyways, thank you for listening. I've been Casey. This has been Melodic Memories of Lights Monarch. And thank you again for discovering the music within.